size, the model that's perfect for you. We don't actually require you to buy higher or lower. And finally, 12 terabyte drives. As I said, we're the first company, the first backup appliance vendor to offer the 12 terabyte drives. This is a staggeringly large drive. I'm showing my age here a little bit, but 12 terabyte drives are humongous. But using 12 terabyte drives allows us actually to use fewer drives in the box. Having fewer drives means that you have fewer failures. Obviously, drives are, from my days as a server product manager, 50% of all server failures are drives, 50% of the remainder is power supplies, and all others account for about 25%. So having fewer drives means fewer failures. Also, fewer drives means that we can have a smaller form factor. And then because we have fewer drives, there's lower power requirements and also lower cooling. So, and these drives also include some advanced self-healing capabilities and can actually self-heal both from a physical standpoint, but also if there are RAID issues. So it's not just the loss of particular segments inside the drives, but it also can restore RAID issues. So that results literally in fewer service calls down to the 90% level. So they really are significantly self-reliant. So with the smaller form factor, here's a nice image of the new Gen 8 product. We now offer no 4U boxes. And that's great if you're in a dense data center. 6 models, about almost a third of the line is 1U short. And then 2 models are full 1U, and we have 7 models that are 2U. But 2U is now the maximum size of our offerings. So here's the full lineup. This is available on our website. We have lots of detail on our website, even going in much further detail as far as size and capabilities. I will point out the form factors, the 1U short, the 1U, and then 2U. Even the largest, the 8120S, is only 2U in size. The RAID levels that we offer, and then the upper half of the product line does offer the SSD memories. So very nice layout now, a little bit more thought through as far as all of the offerings. And the Gen 7 models are still available for about 90 days. If there was a reason why you wanted to stay with Gen 7, those still are available. But pretty much now, any opportunities that we have will be sold as Gen 8. So right now we'll go to our polling question number 2. This one has to do more with your use of the cloud. We just recently conducted the Unitrends cloud survey. We do this every year. It helps us to not only craft our messages, but also decide product capabilities. And just wanted to poll and ask, are you using the cloud today for backup, recovery, or archiving purposes? And if you are, which type of cloud? And if you aren't, your intentions. So if you would just take a moment here and let us know about your cloud usage, this would actually help us in writing marketing content, which is my next campaign that I'm writing, is 10 findings from the cloud. Actually surprising findings about the adoption of cloud and how a lot of the resistance of using cloud seems to have dissipated over the last 2 years. We're finding a much higher acceptance rate, and the people who are not using the cloud anticipate that they will be using the cloud much sooner in the 6 to 12 month time frame, showing the resistance is going down. So it looks like we have equal numbers of people who are using the cloud and not using the cloud. And by far, I'm still waiting on about a third of half the respondents. But the cloud is becoming much more reliable. The cloud is becoming a major part of how people back up and protect their data today. And if you aren't considering it, you really should consider it, because it really does offer some unique advantages. We also found that it's the mid-sized companies who are the ones that are most resistant to using the cloud. Small businesses are using it because they don't have a secondary site for backup and recovery. Large enterprises are using it as a cheap storage platform and a way of distributing their workloads. But it's the mid-sized companies who have the lowest adoption rates for cloud. Okay, so equal numbers and looking good. All right, thank you very much. This will really help me as far as my writing and marketing cloud that we're going to do from going forward. Okay, so what's new in 10.2? This is the backup software that is available to all Unitrends customers and comes pre-installed on all new products. And what you'll see is, and we're very proud of this, is that we have gained certification from Nutanix, and we are now Nutanix ready. I'll talk about Nutanix, and then we'll flip this over to Tommy, and then Tommy will take you through a couple of the new UI features that are available and take us through the rest of the presentation. So on Nutanix, we are now certified as Nutanix ready. We actually worked with Nutanix. We have passed some integration tests that they have and done some compliance work. And we are now listed on the Nutanix website as Nutanix ready. One of my case studies is up there, and also from one of our joint customers. But let me take you through what Nutanix ready actually means. So first, for anyone who may not be familiar with who Nutanix is the leader in hyper-converged architecture. So traditional architecture, IT managers had to go out and buy separate servers, storage, networking devices, piece them together. Each had its own separate administration and control panel. Each had its own upgrade path. Sometimes the upgrades would break the connections between the devices, and it made for kind of a disjointed architecture that was difficult to manage. Nutanix is the leader in what's called hyper-converged architecture, and that is that the storage, networking, and servers are all located in a single box. So much easier to administer, easier to buy, very easy to scale up. All you do is add another box, and it's also easy to scale out because you could then link these Nutanix devices across geographical locations. So by adding Unitrends to support the hyper-converged environment, you are basically enabling hyper-converged users to gain all the advanced features of data protection and disaster recovery. But perhaps the biggest element of Nutanix, the biggest advantage, is that they have their own hypervisor, and it's called Acropolis, or AHV. AHV stands for Acropolis Hypervisor. A lot of IT managers will tell you today that VMware is now probably the most costly element of their data center. The license fees are quite high, and they're actually getting a lot of features that they don't particularly use or plan to use. And so therefore, they're paying a large amount of money and not really utilizing the VMware features. So for Nutanix, they've actually built their own hypervisor. It's a Linux hypervisor, and they offer it to their customers at little or no cost. And so it can run natively on the hyper-converged platform. And so and some of the customers that I've actually interviewed have reported that AHV runs faster on the hyper-converged architecture than VMware. I will not vouch for that, but I will just tell you that just anecdotally I have heard that. So the integration portion now is that Unitrends can natively support Nutanix AHV hypervisors with all of the same features and functions that we have for VMware, Hyper-V, Vsphere, and other hypervisors in the marketplace. So really, together, Unitrends and Nutanix offers a better than some of the parts type of solution. We now offer to Nutanix users the ability to get access to the cloud, to have automated ransomware detection, and some of the other features that you get from partnering with Unitrends. So really, it's an enterprise class solution that when you add Unitrends to the Nutanix environment. And so now we have native support for all of the features and benefits that are on the left-hand side of the slide here. Our simple UI is easily to manage your backup and recovery, as well as a simple UI from Nutanix. So basically, you're now managing your data center with only two admin portals. We get the automated ransomware detection, centralized backup and recovery, granular recovery for applications such as SQL, Outlook, and SharePoint, and access to our cloud. We are still working on getting the next level of certification with Nutanix, and we look forward to that. Unfortunately, for now, you still need to use agents if you want to have disaster recovery as a service, or copy data management, or recovery series testing. But we're working on that, and someday in the future, we'll be able to announce that those are now covered natively. So now what I'm going to do is I want to flip the presentation over to Tommy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to give Tommy the capability of being the presenter. And okay, Tommy, you're on mute, and you are now the presenter.
Cool. Hey, thank you, Dick. Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes, we do.
All right. Welcome, everyone. And so I want to walk us through a short demo of the product here. You know, if you guys are very interested, you want to take a deeper dive, we'd love to schedule a one-on-one, and we can talk specifically to your environment and how we can work around that. But really today, we want to show you at a high level what our product looks like, right? Also, as a reminder, we do have these nice appliances for a turnkey solution. We do have software as an option as well, right? So if you're in an environment that already made prior investments in storage and server, we can certainly still take advantage of those with our software-only deployment. So don't feel like you have to only do hardware or software only, right? We do have that flexibility. Now, before we get into the demo, I do want to show you just one slide here, and it's I like this slide a lot because it shows you a completeness of a vision of how we fit into the backup and DR space, right? So locally, as you guys would expect out of a backup solution, you know, we can back up physical, we can back up virtual, we can back up different applications and NASs, but we also allow you to archive your data for long term, or we call it backup copies, right? We understand that a lot of organizations have long-term requirements, so they may need to keep data for 7 years or even longer, so we offer you a lot of different options for archiving. But like Dick mentioned, you know, the cloud and disaster recovery is where the industry is going. So we do offer a lot of different options, whether you want to replicate to a hosted cloud like Unitrends, or a hyper-converged cloud like AWS or Azure, or maybe you want to build your own, right? If you're an organization that has multiple data centers, branch offices, and you like to connect these sites together to build your own DR plan, we can certainly provide that as an option as well. Okay? And again, I want to remind you guys, if you have any technical questions, you know, please type those in the chat, or maybe save them for later, and we can certainly do one-on-one here. Okay? All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into the interface. So this is our product interface here today. Everything is web-driven today. You know, if you guys are still using physical client from other applications, those are completely gone. We just need a web browser and HTML5 support, right? So to log in, I point my browser here to the server IP address, and we're currently logged into the dashboard. And looking at just the dashboard here, I have a lot of information to absorb here, right? I can see what kind of backups I've had previously, how much storage I've used, what kind of jobs I have currently running, so on and so forth. And this interface, what's nice about it, it's very customizable. I can rearrange things, I can delete things, I can prioritize things. So if you're an admin that focuses on a certain application, certain environment, like the virtual side, you can customize this to your liking, right? And of course, we have a lot of reports that go with these items here. So if I need to go in and generate a report, maybe once a month or once a quarter because we're getting audited, we can go ahead and generate these reports right here. Okay? And we have dozens of reports that you can go back and select here. So whatever you need, most likely we have something that can fit the bill. Okay? Now, like Dick mentioned, the solution is a very scalable solution. If you have multiple appliances, multiple sites, we make it easy to manage everything under the same single pane of glass. So I can manage as many appliances globally as I want, right? I can also manage Tier 2 storage for archiving. So if I like to add a NAS, I like to add a cloud, I like to add a SAN for archiving, I can certainly add that here. Or maybe you're looking to get your data off-site. A lot of people are trying to move away from tape, so they're now starting to replicate off-site. Of course, that's going to require a lot of bandwidth use, so we can come in here and set up your bandwidth utilization and scheduling and throttling here as well. Okay? And so we've been around for 29 years now, and we've been doing this for a while, and we've accumulated a lot of support for different applications and operating systems. So, if you're more than just a Windows shop or a VMware shop or a Nutanix shop, you may have a lot of Linux machines or Mac or anything like that. We want to be that one-stop shop for all things related to backup, right? So we can do Linux, we can do Mac, we can do AS400, all those one-off that you may not, you may need to get a third-party solution. So we have a lot of support for in applications too, like Exchange and SharePoint and SQL and so on and so forth, right? Now in 10.2, we've improved the UI quite a bit. So you now have a lot of filtering option. Like I can go to Protect here and filter through my asset. Large environments, you have thousands of servers or hundreds of databases. It's easy to quickly search and filter for certain applications and assets that you want to find to protect or restore, right? And setting up backups is very easy and straightforward. And, we have a team that helps every one of our customers get onboarded and installed and configured. And let me show you an example here real quick, right? I can pick the servers I want to protect, or I can pick the databases I want to protect, or I want to pick the VMs I want to protect, right? And here you have our Nutanix AHV as the latest addition here. Now, once you hit next, traditionally you can run backups using fulls with incrementals or differentials. Nowadays we recommend incremental forever, where you only have to do a one-time full backup, or you can custom build your own. So visually, I like to do this. I like to bring up a calendar and kind of plan out my month or my quarters, how I back up. So for instance, if I'm doing a backup the first of the month here, I would simply drag and drop that backup in there, right? And then if I want to set up a reoccurrence of incrementals or differential, I simply just drag that into the calendar and specify the reoccurrence here, right? Now, while we have this open, the way incremental forever works is once I do that initial full, a week later, 2 weeks later, we don't have to do another full backup. Traditionally, a lot of people do fulls on weekends and then incrementals on weekdays, right? That type of process is no longer as critical. So we actually create synthetic fulls for you on a weekly basis. Now, we also have the ability to set up backups in a non-traditional way. Instead of defining what time, what schedule, what servers to run, we have what's called Sla Based Policy. And this allows you to go in and configure, what is my RPO? And, if you guys remember, RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective. The way I like to think about it is, how much data can I afford to lose? If this server goes down, can I afford 1 hour or 4 hours or 12 hours? Whatever that number is, you can certainly set that setting, and then the system automatically schedule the backups for you. So I can have 1,000 servers scheduled under maybe 2 or 3 policy with different RPOs, and the system automatically manages my backup schedule for me. So make it very easy, very streamlined. People like to categorize it in like a gold, a silver, a bronze type of grouping, and we can do that here as well, okay? Now, I do want to focus a little more on the recovery side, right? Backup's great. Once you set up everything, you hopefully never have to use it, or you never have to touch it until something breaks or something like that, right? But we like to make restore as easy as possible, because when you're recovering, you want to make this intuitive. So I want to show you a couple examples here of how we can get your data back, right? So one of the most common restore that anybody gets is going to be, hey, I deleted a file, or I don't know where this folder is, right? So again, we have the ability to filter through our data over here on the right-hand side. So if I'm looking for like a file server, I can quickly filter for that. And then once I do locate the file server, I can browse for what dates and what time that I'm trying to recover from, and we can easily drill into the folders and the files here and just pick out what I need to put back, right? So that's very easy to go in and select those. Okay? Now, we also have the ability to search your backup. And what I mean by that is, sometimes you get a request from accounting or HR and saying like, hey, I'm missing this document. I don't know where it is, but I do know what it was called, or maybe the type of file it was, right? So you have to do a little detective work here. And what we allow you to do is be able to search that entire server for files based on the string or the type or a wildcard here, right? And what I like about this search a lot is that it not only finds you that particular file, but also different versions of the file that are out there. So you may have a spreadsheet or a QuickBook file that someone modifies and works on every day, and now there's a revision of different version of it every time you do a new backup. So we make that easy to kind of sort through the different files out there. Okay? Now, it's not just about file backup and file data. You also have a lot of databases as well, right? So most of you guys are running some instances of SQL or SharePoint or Oracle or Exchange, and we can support all those different applications. Real quick demo here of SQL backup. We can back up at the database level. We can do transaction logs. I can recover this database to another SQL instance. I can even roll back the database to a particular point in time, right? So here I'm doing transaction logs every 2 hours, and if I need to put this data back to 6 o'clock, or maybe I realize, when we came in this morning, the database is no longer good after 6 o'clock, so I want to go back just a minute or so here in my transaction log. So you get a lot of control, a lot of power over when you recover this data. Okay? And then for applications like Exchange and SharePoint and Oracle, we have all the necessary plugin and all the features to restore those databases. So, if you guys have any particular question about those applications, please, ask or type those into the chat box. Now, as a quick side note here, a lot of people are moving to Office 365. We see that people are uploading their email, even their files into OneDrive. So Unitrends, we do offer backup of Office 365 as well, right? So as you guys know, you might have moved that application, those databases off-site, but you're still susceptible to things like human errors, malicious attack from viruses and things like that that can delete or corrupt your data. So having a good, robust backup solution, not just locally, but in the cloud, gives you a lot of options to recover emails and files in the Office 365. And again, we'll be happy to show you a demo of that one-on-one if you guys want to see that even further. Okay? Now, I want to jump back here and talk a little bit about the cloud and how we work with that. We do offer a lot of options when it comes to cloud storage and spin up in the cloud, whether you want to build your own, you want to use Amazon, you want to use Unitrends. So we have a lot of different options there. And we also make it easy to restore from the cloud. So for instance, if you need to restore a file from the cloud, it's a matter of just searching for that server again and then changing where that data is located. Maybe it's off-site or in the cloud somewhere, right? We can pull a file directly from Amazon, directly from our cloud from 6 months ago or a year ago. So we make that very easy to do that. Okay? Some of the nice feature we have built into these appliances is actually the ability to spin up an actual server on the appliance, right? These appliances that we have their own processor, their own CPU and RAM, their own storage that you can leverage as a spin-up capability, right? So I can actually take a backup and create what we call the replica right on the appliance. I can spin up a server right on the appliance as a temporary solution if one of my servers goes down, right? So we have that as a really nice feature for spin-up. And then one of the things we are doing that a lot of our customers like is the ability to sandbox and test your backup in this environment. And let me show you what I mean by that, right? So nowadays, everybody expects a backup solution to do backup and to restore when needed, right? But a lot of people are skipping or forgetting that, just because you have backup doesn't always mean it's going to guarantee to restore. So we have the ability to go in and actually take your backup and then test them in a sandbox environment. So right here, I'm going to select a couple dozen servers or so here. I'm going to hit next, and then we get to decide where we're going to test this into. So you may have a separate VMware lab, a Hyper-V lab, or a Nutanix lab that you want to test your backups on. We can certainly target that. And also what's important is to know what your objectives are. You know, if I'm going to recover, you know, am I going to do it in 1 hour? Or is my RPO going to be 24 hours? So you can have these objectives to make sure you're compliant, right? And then we can run this on a schedule. Basically, you can automatically test your backup as often as you want. Some people do it once a day, once a week, or you may get audited once a quarter. So this is how often we're going to do it, right? But how it's tested is actually very important. So this is where we kind of get into the detail here, right? These are the machines we want to test together. And for every one of these machines, I can come in and configure how they're tested. So for example, I've selected the SQL server here as one of my test machines, right? And I can go in and specify what the boot order is, which is very important. If I'm bringing up a dozen servers, they need to come up in certain order, right? I need to be able to bring up my domain controller, my firewall, things like that, and then I can bring in my applications and my databases and so on and so forth, right? I can even reconfigure CPU and RAM. If I'm testing this in a different site, different lab, I may not need to give it all the same amount of CPU and RAM, right? I can even give it a guest credential to log in and change my server's settings. So for instance, if I'm going to sandbox this, I can change that server's IP address, that subnet, that gateway DNS, right? But most important of all is to actually validate and guarantee that your applications and your services are running. So we can even recommend an application test on that machine, right? We're not just bringing up the server and showing you a login screen, which a lot of vendors do. You know, here's a printout of the login screen, and then they shut it down and they're good to go. But we take it one step further. We can log into your Exchange server, we can log into your SQL server and run certain application level tests, right? So if I want to make sure the SQL server is running, I can run a SQL query on that machine. Or if this is a file server, I can run a script to check if a certain directory is there. Or if this is a domain controller, I can run my Active Directory domain services here. Yeah? So a lot of options to actually test your application and your environment. Now, once you do complete these type of tests, we can come back here to the dashboard, and there's an item called Recovery Assurance, and this shows you what your previous tests are, right? You know, am I compliant? Are these tests successful, or did I have warnings and failures, right? So we can go into each one of these tests and actually look at what steps were taken. So for instance, here I have a runbook of one particular test where we brought up 3 servers in 3 different orders, and when the test completed, you know, we shut it off, we remove it, and then we record how long that all took. So it's very important that we know if we have a disaster today, if we went down today, you know, this is how fast we can bring up, this is how fast we can orchestrate my failover. And a lot of people love reports like compliance reports where we can tell you exactly, you know, how long that all took. We call this recovery time actuals or recovery point actuals as opposed to recovery point objectives. Okay? Now, a lot of the things that's hard for me to show on this demo here are what's going in behind this system. So first and foremost, everything you would expect out of a enterprise backup solution like deduplication, compression, encryption, all that's built in, right? So all that's going to be provided with the solution. It's not another feature that you have to add, another SKU you have to add. It's all inclusive. And then over time, you can run reports like this to see how well your data compresses and deduplicate, right? On the other hand, we do have a lot of feature around ransomware. A lot of you guys have already heard about ransomware or maybe came across from ransomware. Maybe it's, you know, attacked a part of your environment or kind of came through, got caught, but, you know, no damage was done. So we see a lot of that now in the industry. What we're doing to combat against ransomware is 2 things. Well, first of all, this backup system is Unix-based, right? We lock it down, we keep it as isolated from the environment as possible so that if your file server or your servers were compromised, your backups are going to be entirely separate. We want to keep that, you know, quarantine from the rest of the environment. The other thing that we do is we have built-in artificial intelligence to monitor your data. What I mean by that is every time you create a new backup, we look at that backup and we compare it to previous backups. So if you have a system that constantly changes at a constant rate, and then all of a sudden you have this big spike overnight, right? Something that may be consistent with ransomware, well, we're going to flag those. We're going to alert you on those where we think it's suspicious. And you get a little notification here on the top right with a little red skull saying that, hey, you know, we've seen this anomaly on the following server. You may want to go in and investigate, right? And the last thing you ever want to find out is that, you know, you've had data that's been compromised out of ransomware and your backup has been doing its thing without realizing it's backing up bad data, right? So we want to get in front of that problem as well. Right? But also, we have the ability to scan your backups and scan your servers for these type of threats. So I can actually stand up a file server, a backup of my file server, and actually run a file scan against it. So I know if there's a ransomware on there or my files and folders are compromised. So we do have that built into our system here. And let me go back to that settings screen here. Right there. So we have our own built-in malware scanner that you can run against folders and drives for ransomware detection. All right. So, you know, I think that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Dick here, and we can start taking your questions. Again, my name's Tommy. You know, if you guys want to have a one-on-one discussion about your environment, how we can kind of improve your backup and VR solution, we certainly love to have that conversation. There's a lot to offer here. There's a lot to show here, and we look forward to talking to you guys.
Thank you, Tommy. Good presentation. And so I'm going to get us back now to the slides. And am I sharing my screen? Okay, hang on a sec. Okay, just a second, I have to share my screen. And there we go. So thank you, Tommy, for the demo. And now what we'll do is I just wanted to highlight one thing that Tommy talked about, which was the ransomware story. We're proud, and this is fairly new news, only a couple of weeks old, is that we were voted the Ransomware Protection Company of the Year by Storage Magazine. So the magazine is based out of the UK. We are a worldwide company, but we're very proud of the fact that we won this award. So doing a lot for the prevention of ransomware. So why don't we, while we're by Kevin's getting ready to ask the questions, just a couple of call to action here. We do have a 5-minute health check that you can go and get some advice about next steps you can do to improve the overall health of your IT infrastructure. If you like Tommy's demo and would like to drill down more, you can request a demo on our website. And then we always have continuity experts that are available to discuss anything that we showed you today. So, okay, so why don't we open up now for questions?
Sounds good. This is my favorite part of the webinar where I get to quiz Tommy and see if I can pick his brain on some things. So, Tommy, first question is, what is the oldest version of Exchange that version 10.2 supports? Do you know that one?
I should, yeah. Let me go ahead and bring up my document here real quick. It's going to take just 2 seconds.
Yeah, so we support a lot of 250 hypervisors, operating systems, so forth. I believe even on the OSs we go back to Windows 10. So, I mean, we do have quite a history of support.
Yeah. Windows NT is the farthest we go back to. But NT. going back to Exchange, we support as old as version 2000. So, and then every version after that, right? And also, if you have an Exchange cluster like a DAG, we support that as well. So, and not only do we support it, but we do offer granular recovery of those. So if you want to restore like individual emails or contacts or deleted items, we do have that functionality.
Awesome. Looks like we have another question here that was chatted in. It's Kyle, and he's asking, they use scale computing, and he wants to know if this solution would be compatible with scale.
We are working with Scale right now. We are not yet certified for Scale, but we do have Scale customers that are using our software. In fact, I wrote a customer success story on it. If you go to our website and look and just put in Scale in the search engine, you'll find it. But we don't have the same interoperability that we do have with the Nutanix, but we're working on it.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug. Jeremy asked a really good question here. He said, what solutions do you offer for backing up cloud data centers to on-prem?
Oh, that's a great question. So today we talked about the physical appliance and even the software, right? But if you do have servers and workloads in the cloud like Amazon and Azure, you can actually go into their marketplace today and search for Unitrends because we have a virtual appliance that can be deployed in the cloud. And what that allows you to do is once you have that up and running in the cloud, we can then deploy agents, we can back up those workloads in the cloud and also replicate it out of the cloud, right? So a lot of people who are doing a hybrid deployment where they have local data center and they have some workload in the cloud, they do like that option that they can deploy Unitrends at both ends and replicate it back and forth to get my data offsite or into another data center.
Awesome. Thank you, Tommy. Robert here with a quick question. He says, in regard to Nutanix, you said something about needing agents. Does that mean that every agent installed, or does that mean just an agent installed on every VM?
Well, yes and no. We do have the ability to talk directly to the hypervisor and do agentless snapshots. So that's how we can back up all the VMs, right? Agentless snapshot. But you do have the option to install as many agents as you want on every one of your VMs if that's a requirement. Now, why would you do something like that, right? Well, sometimes you have servers with specific databases that you want to just target the database. Maybe you have a Red Hat running Oracle or you have a Windows running SQL. Deploying that agent give you more control over what you back up inside of it. So I can do transaction logs, I can do database backup every 1 hour or something like that. So we give you a lot of different options to deploy this, but you're not certainly required agents on those VMs.
Awesome, thank you. Ken here with a good question. He says, will 10.2 permit us to split backups for a single server to crash consistent versus application consistent?
You mean with virtual machines? I believe in the setting here for the appliances, you do have the ability to set up, I think there's 3 options: crash consistent, application aware. So those options are still there. Related to Nutanix, I believe that's not available yet. That's only available for VMware and Hyper-V. But that hasn't changed in 10.2. I don't think that was changed at all.
Gotcha. Looks like you wanted to know on the same server too, but it looks like we covered that. All right, Russell here wants to know, does version 10.2 support Vsphere 6.7?
As of today, I believe we do support up to 6.5. Let me confirm that real quick here. Okay, so today we do support up to 6.5, not yet 6.7. We are in the process of getting that certified. So usually we're a couple months behind. So once that is released, it's going to be in a package that you can download and update directly in the system. But as of right now, it is up to 6.5 Vsphere.
All right, looks like Anthony has a really good question here. How does your product back up Office 365 now? And more importantly, how do you restore?
It's a great question. So for Office 365, it's actually a very simple setup and simple product. It takes literally maybe 5 or 10 minutes to get up and running. And essentially what we're doing in the back end is that we're snapshotting your entire Office 365 tenant, and then we're storing that within Microsoft's cloud. So we actually create an Azure instance where we deposit and we save your Office 365 snapshot. So that's how we actually back up the Office 365, and that includes all your emails, all your OneDrive, and SharePoint sites. So it's nothing you have to install locally. There's nothing you have to manage locally. You don't even have to manage the cloud storage. We do that for you, and by the way, it's unlimited storage. We keep as many backup copies as we've taken. We don't delete anything unless you specify a retention policy. but it is a very easy product, but very complete and very comprehensive.
Yeah, actually, end users can manage their own accounts. You don't have to go through an admin. In fact, there's a phone app that would allow an end user to manage his own account and restore a lost file by himself.
Awesome. Really good question, Anthony. Mark wants to know, does Unitrends support backing up encrypted SQL databases?
Oh, I think that's a tricky one. For encrypted databases, sometimes, one of the challenges with that is every time you go to back it up, it looks like the new database, right? Because things are encrypted. So oftentimes, if that's the case, the DBA would do their own backup script or their own backup job, and then dump the database to a local folder or a network folder somewhere, and then we pick up those files. Now, again, we do have our own agents for SQL that can do that directly. Unless you guys are tied to that method, we recommend using the SQL agent. But we certainly can back up SQL databases that are encrypted, just not as efficient.
Awesome. Looks like we got time for a couple more questions here. Robert wants to know, can we do multiple configurations for one backup box? For example, they have VMware, Hyper-V, and a physical server and Nutanix. Will one backup appliance consolidate all those platforms?
Absolutely. Again, like Dick mentioned, we do support 250 operating systems and applications today, right? So most environments are hybrid or mixed, so we certainly can do a VMware snapshot and then do a Nutanix snapshot and then deploy agents for your physical servers. So we do have a lot of ways to protect that environment. We really do want to be your one-stop shop when it comes to backup and DR.
Yeah, I add to that even hardcore Nutanix users still have traditional servers and storage inside their infrastructure. And so you can use the Unitrends appliances for all of your infrastructure, Nutanix and traditional.
Awesome. And just going back on a follow-up here to Ken's question from earlier, between the crash and the application consistent, he wants to know if they had two separate jobs, or if they would like to run two separate jobs for the same server, one crash consistent and one application consistent, and wants to know if that's available on 10.2.
I see. Yeah, I think unfortunately that setting is a global setting just for that particular VM. So even if you create multiple backup jobs for that VM, it's going to still take on that one setting. Now, if this is a database server or a database server that's a VM, we sometimes recommend that you do a VM snapshot with crash consistent to get everything, the operating system and so on. But also you want to supplement that with an agent, and you want to back up the database separately. And that gives you, again, more control how often you back it up rather than doing the whole VM at a time. I'd love to take a deeper dive, maybe look at your environment, Kevin, if you're available later, and we can offer some suggestions there.
Awesome. Thank you, Tommy. It looks like we're getting a lot of good questions, and unfortunately we're running out of time today. So we will follow up with anyone that did ask a question after the conclusion of this presentation. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to Dick and Tommy so much for your time today. I know you guys are both extremely busy, so that was very informative and very helpful as well. Just a couple quick reminders before we sign off. We did record this webinar today, so we will be sending out a link to view the recording at the conclusion of this, and we'll also be notifying that one lucky winner of the $500 Amazon gift card, so that's going to be awesome. Another thing to discuss as well is that we do have a webinar coming up next Thursday on August 16th. It's kind of going to be a back-to-school theme webinar where we're going to have our CTO, Mark Jordan, on, and he's going to discuss disaster recovery trends from across the industry. And for every 100 attendees that we get to show up for that webinar, we're going to be donating $500 to a school or educational charity of your choice. So it's a kind of a good way for you to show up, here's good trends, and then give back to your local community as well. So with that, thank you everybody for your time today, and have a great rest of your week and great weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.